Before Dr. Richard Hallberg began asking his elderly patients about their private habits, most had never spoken a word about them, not to their spouses, not to their friends, and certainly not to a doctor. But after decades of silent routines, many were stunned to discover that something as personal as masturbation could be quietly affecting their heart, prostate, and emotional stability. And now, with decades of experience and real science in hand, Dr. Hallberg is pulling back the curtain to help men over 60 reclaim their health connection and dignity, starting with the conversation no one ever thought to have. Welcome to Stories True Health, where real stories meet real science. Guided by Dr. True, we uncover the hidden truths behind aging healing and the choices that shape our future. Dr. Richard Hallberg, a seasoned urologist in Seattle with over 35 years of experience, sat quietly in his office, reviewing another chart. Like many of his patients, the man he had just seen was over 60, had no major complaints, but carried a weight he couldn't describe, a quiet confusion about his changing body, his emotions, and his private routines. It's never just physical, Dr. Hallberg would often say, especially at this stage in life. One of the most overlooked aspects of men's health after 60 is masturbation, a topic shrouded in silence, shame, or shrugged off as irrelevant. But for Dr. Hallberg, it's become a window into deeper health patterns that affect not just the prostate, but also the heart hormones, sleep, and even mental well-being. As testosterone declines with age, the way the body responds to stimulation, stress, and sexual habits changes significantly. Regular sexual activity, including masturbation, is natural, but problems arise when habits become compulsive, disconnected, or are used to self-soothe chronic loneliness or stress. According to a 2020 study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, elderly men who reported compulsive sexual behaviors were more likely to experience elevated levels of anxiety and cardiovascular strain, especially when those behaviors were used as an escape rather than healthy expression. We need to reframe the conversation, Dr. Hallberg explains. This isn't about telling men what not to do. It's about helping them understand why they're doing it, how it's affecting them, and what can be done to regain control and vitality. Through hundreds of cases, he's come to recognize patterns. Some patients masturbate excessively out of boredom, others rely on it to fall asleep, and some find it replaces lost intimacy. But few realize the unintended consequences until symptoms show up: prostate inflammation, fatigue, heart palpitations, or a creeping sense of isolation. At 63, a patient once told Dr. Hallberg, "Doc, it's not that I do it, I just don't know why I feel worse afterward." That's where awareness must begin. As we step into Chapter 2, we'll explore the 7 most common mistakes older men make with masturbation, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of understanding and science. When it comes to masturbation habits after 60, most men never receive guidance. They simply carry old routines into a new phase of life, unaware that their bodies and hormones have changed. Dr. Hallberg has identified 7 silent mistakes that frequently show up in his practice, often masked as fatigue, irritability, or subtle shifts in well-being. The first is frequency. Many older men maintain a pattern that suited them in their 30s, but with age-related drops in testosterone and slower recovery times, high frequency can lead to pelvic muscle fatigue, lower energy levels, and even mild inflammation of the prostate. The second mistake is relying on explicit high-intensity stimulation, especially via online content, which can desensitize natural arousal pathways and trigger a cycle of dopamine depletion. A 2019 study in Frontiers in Psychology showed that excessive use of pornography is linked with decreased satisfaction in real-life relationships and reduced brain responsiveness to sexual cues. The third mistake is turning masturbation into a sleep aid. While it may help with falling asleep, it can disrupt deeper sleep stages due to the post-orgasmic surge in prolactin and the eventual drop in dopamine, leading to fragmented rest. The fourth involves ignoring discomfort or pain. Some men experience stinging, bloating, or urinary symptoms afterward, but assume it's just part of aging when in fact it may indicate chronic prostatitis or pelvic floor tension. The fifth mistake is psychological dependence. For those dealing with grief, isolation, or depression, masturbation becomes a coping mechanism, yet this emotional self-soothing, when habitual, can delay real healing or connection. The sixth mistake is neglecting hydration and physical activity. Seminal fluid production and muscle recovery require adequate hydration and blood flow. Sedentary men who skip water and movement often report fatigue or lack of libido. Finally, the seventh mistake is shame and secrecy. Keeping these habits hidden from doctors or partners creates a feedback loop of guilt and disconnection, worsening both physical and emotional health. None of these are inherently harmful, Dr. Hallberg says, but the way they're used makes all the difference. Recognizing these patterns is the first step. In Chapter 3, we'll examine how these habits don't just affect the prostate, but also place unexpected stress on one of the body's most vital systems, the heart. Most men over 60 focus on prostate health when discussing sexual habits, but few consider how their heart might be silently affected. Dr. Hallberg has long suspected a deeper link between autonomic stress and sexual behavior in his older patients. When masturbation becomes frequent or intense, especially in moments of emotional emptiness or late-night isolation, it can trigger a physiological cascade, rapid heart rate, temporary spikes in blood pressure, and a sharp release of stress hormones like cortisol. For a younger man, these responses are quickly regulated, but in older men with pre-existing cardiovascular conditions, the strain can linger longer and have lasting effects. According to a 2019 study in the American Journal of Cardiology, men over 60 who reported engaging in sexual activity without adequate recovery or emotional regulation were at higher risk of arrhythmias and elevated heart rate variability, especially if coupled with a sedentary lifestyle and unmanaged stress. The reason lies in the body's shifting balance of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. As men age, the ability to rebound from physical or emotional stressors weakens. A single act of high-intensity masturbation, especially when driven by compulsion or stress, can simulate a fight-or-flight response, with the heart bearing the brunt. Dr. Hallberg recounts a case Walter Jenkins, a retired mechanical engineer at 67, experienced lightheadedness and heart fluttering after nighttime sessions. At first, he dismissed it as anxiety or dehydration, but a stress test revealed early signs of atrial fibrillation. After modifying his habits, focusing on slower breathing, reducing frequency, and adding daily walks, his symptoms faded. It wasn't about stopping. Walter said it was about changing how I approached it. The cardiovascular system doesn't operate in isolation. It responds to emotion, intention, and rhythm. Recognizing how even private habits play into heart health is vital for aging men who want to remain active and independent. As we turn to Chapter 4, we'll look beyond biology and into something equally powerful, the emotional loneliness that often drives these habits and how to break that cycle. Behind many cases of compulsive masturbation in older men lies something deeper than physical urge, emotional isolation. Dr. Hallberg has come to understand that for many of his patients, especially those living alone or widowed, masturbation becomes not just an act of release, but a substitute for human connection. It's a quiet ritual that fills the gap where companionship once lived. While occasional solitude is natural chronic loneliness, triggers real physiological effects. Studies show that prolonged social isolation can lead to higher levels of cortisol-weakened immune function and poor sleep. A 2018 study published in the Journals of Gerontology Series B found that socially isolated older adults were significantly more likely to engage in habitual, self-soothing behaviors, including compulsive eating, alcohol use, and masturbation as coping mechanisms. These behaviors may offer short-term comfort, but often reinforce the cycle of emotional detachment. Dr. Hallberg shares the story of Gerald, a 71-year-old former truck driver who lost his wife a decade ago. Since then, Gerald's days had grown quiet, too quiet. He admitted to masturbating several times a day, not out of desire, but to momentarily relieve the ache of silence. "I wasn't chasing pleasure," he said. "I was trying to fill a hole." Gerald's case is not unique. Many older men feel a growing sense of invisibility in society, retired, less active, sometimes physically limited. Without intentional efforts to connect, whether through friendships, volunteering, or even pet companionship, loneliness quietly expands, and habits like masturbation take on roles they were never meant to play. Dr. Hallberg urges his patients to reframe their needs. The desire for touch, attention, and closeness is not shameful. It's human. But when we try to meet those needs in isolation, we end up hungrier than before. Recognizing the emotional layer of sexual behavior is the first step toward change. In Chapter 5, we'll explore practical steps older men can take to reshape their habits without shame, without extremes, and regain a sense of balance, dignity, and connection in everyday life. For men over 60, the goal isn't to eliminate masturbation, it's to understand it, manage it, and integrate it into a lifestyle that promotes overall health. Dr. Hallberg emphasizes that sexual expression remains an important part of life at any age, but it must evolve with the body's changing rhythms. After decades of treating older patients, he's developed a practical approach grounded in both empathy and evidence. First, he encourages men to monitor their emotional state before and after the act. Are they reaching for relief from boredom, sadness, or stress? Or is it a healthy expression of intimacy with themselves? Awareness changes behavior. Second, he suggests replacing routine triggers with new habits. For example, taking a short walk when loneliness strikes, or calling a friend can break the cycle of compulsive behavior. A 2021 study in Archives of Sexual Behavior found that older adults who engaged in regular physical activity and social connection reported more satisfaction with their sexual lives and less reliance on solitary habits. Hydration, diet, and sleep also play pivotal roles. Seminal fluid is composed largely of water and nutrients. If men are dehydrated or malnourished, recovery becomes sluggish. Quality sleep helps regulate testosterone and mood, reducing the need for artificial emotional regulation through sexual habits. Dr. Hallberg also recommends mindfulness-based techniques like breathing exercises or guided meditation to reconnect with one's body in a calm, intentional way. Finally, talking about it matters. Whether through a support group therapist or trusted doctor, voicing one's struggles reduces shame and opens the door to healthier patterns. Gerald, the former truck driver, began attending a weekly community breakfast group and started walking his neighbor's dog each morning. He didn't stop masturbating, but he no longer needed it to numb loneliness. "It's just one part of me now," he shared, "not my whole routine." In the end, healthy sexuality after 60 is less about restriction and more about rebalancing, honoring both the physical and emotional dimensions of aging. As we close this journey, we'll reflect on the larger lesson that dignity, connection, and vitality are always within reach at any age for any man willing to listen inward and make small, intentional changes. The greatest lesson in this story is that healing doesn't always come from silence, but from honesty, connection, and the courage to look inward. For many men over 60, acknowledging their needs, physical, emotional, and spiritual, is the first step toward freedom. Just like the heart needs rhythm and the body needs balance, the soul needs light. And sometimes that light comes in unexpected ways, through a conversation, through change, or through quiet grace. In a world that often forgets its elders, this story is a gentle reminder that every man still carries purpose, still holds worth, and is never too far gone to begin again. In the quiet spaces of healing, perhaps there is also a touch of God's mercy, subtle, steady, and always waiting for us to reach. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone you care about. Leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. Subscribe for more real stories that matter. And if you believe in the power of new beginnings and silent blessings, type Amen in the comments, and may God bless you on your journey.